to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's kind of fun to hear a full room of people say that. All right, we'll go ahead, and just a reminder to silence your cell phone. The listening devices are available if you need them, and if you plan to speak today, there's a sign-up sheet over in the corner. If you could go ahead and sign in, that will allow you to leave your address there and you won't have to say it publicly. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I need to recuse myself for the next item.
Look for a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So move. Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Bleinberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries.
All right, so that takes us to item 10, which is our first regular business item, which is the item which I suspect many of you are here for today. And I'd like to welcome you here. I'd like to apologize, frankly, the fact that most of you had to come back because of my absence at the May 23rd meeting, and I was out of the country actually visiting a relative who's ill, and so it was pretty unavoidable on my part. But nevertheless, I apologize and to all of you that you had to take some time away again to come today, but I do appreciate you being here. Want you to know that I've actually watched that meeting multiple times at this point. I have looked at all of the information that was provided, and so I think I have pretty much the same information the other commissioners. I would tell you it's a lot more intimidating to sit here and watch all of you than it is to sit and watch it on video, because most of you don't appear on the video. But it is good to see all of you here today. I did really appreciate the conversation. I thought that people were very respectful. I thought that Commissioner Karski did an excellent job moderating that conversation, and I hope I can rise to that level today. But, as you know, the reason that we're here today is that one of the motions to amend the ordinance ended in a tie vote, and by state statute that automatically pulled that vote here today. That particular amendment had an opportunity for full public comment using the process that was in place for all the amendments that day. But nevertheless, out of respect for all of you that are here today, we will I've decided to allow 10 minutes for each of the proponents and the opponents, focused on the one amendment that is before us today, which is the amendment that was proposed by Commissioner Kipley to change the separation from 750 feet to 350 feet for dwellings, churches, and businesses. That was the particular amendment that ended in a tie vote. And so I will allow, as I said, 10 minutes for each side, and then I'll turn it over to the commission for a vote on that particular amendment. However, if further amendments are offered and seconded, I will permit 10 minutes of limited additional public comment for both proponents and opponents on any further amendments. That additional public comment should address the proposed amendment only. Just by way of information, we had the luxury at the last May 23rd meeting to pretty much clear our agenda so that we could focus on this one particular issue. We did not have that luxury today. And in fact, we go into a meeting on our 2024 budget starting at 11:30 today. And so, we are under more time constraints today than we had at the last meeting. And so we are going to try to limit the public comment just to the amendments that are proposed. Any person who wishes to make public comment must sign in prior to speaking. Those speaking on behalf of the group or entity should both note such representation at the outset of their comments and indicate such representation on the sign-up sheet. All persons wishing to make public comment will be allowed 3 minutes within the time allocations that I described. However, if either the proponents or the opponents are represented by legal counsel or another spokesperson, any representative may, at my discretion, and with the time allocations that I discussed, be granted additional time. To avoid repetition and afford as much time as possible to the other interested parties, those individuals wishing to indicate their support and agreement for any prior comments may give their name and just simply state that I agree. Those rules, for those of you that were here or have watched the May 23rd meeting, should sound fairly familiar because it's pretty much the same process that we used at that particular meeting. So, if there aren't any questions from the commissioners, I would go ahead and invite anybody who'd like to speak in favor of the, I think the way we are doing is in favor of the ordinance as amended. That's the proponent. So anybody who wants to come forward and speak in favor of the ordinance as amended, you're welcome to come forward. Okay, is there anybody who'd like to, I'm not seeing anybody moving, so is there anybody who'd like to speak against the amendment? I'll give that group 10 minutes. You'll go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rick Bonander from Valley Springs. The Declaration of Independence states that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Property owners, whether in cities or the county, have the right to develop their property. And of course, economic development is the reason we are here today. According to Princeton University, the pathway to net zero by 2050 will require almost 70,000 miles of pipeline infrastructure. So as you can see, we are just at the beginning stages with regard to transporting CO2 for sequestration. There will be more CO2 projects that will be crossing Minnehaha County. Ordinance MC-16 demonstrates intelligent land use that will enhance future economic development. It still allows the ethanol companies to collect their 45Z tax credits and Summit and Navigator to collect their 45Q tax credits. This ordinance stays within the parameters of the county, has the authority to regulate. Conversely, this ordinance does not infringe on any other government regulating authority. This ordinance was written by the Minnehaha County State's Attorney's Office, Planning and Zoning, and passed unanimously by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Ordinance MC-16 is a statute that our competent state's attorney office, along with planning and zoning, will be able to defend in court. Therefore, I would like to congratulate the state's attorney's office for their professional approach to drafting this ordinance, the planning and zoning department for having the foresight and vision for intelligent usage for economic development, and the Planning and Zoning Commission for having the courage to pass an ordinance unanimously. On to you, the Minnehaha County Commission. I therefore respectfully ask that you pass this ordinance as written by staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just for clarification, these would be proponents of the ordinance, correct?
The way I set it up is that these are people who are opposing the amendment, which is what is currently in front of it.
Opposing the amendment, but proponents of the ordinance.
I
Okay.
think that would be fine to put it that way.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Kay Burkhart. I agree with everything that Rick just said. And mostly that's what I had written, that we really think the state's attorney's office and the planning and zoning had done a really good job. They know, they understand Minnehaha County and our needs. And I think they really tried their best to satisfy both the residents as well as the pipeline companies. The one comment I would add is remember that if the setback seems too confining in an area, the pipelines still do have options. They can ask for a waiver from the landowner, or they can apply for a conditional use permit. So it's, there are some options for the pipeline. Thank you very much for all the time you guys have spent on this.
Good morning, Commission. My name is Joy Hone, Hartford. We want to thank you again for your time and commitment to our community to establish a reasonable setback for hazardous pipelines. We may not always see eye to eye on this or other issues, but we respect your attention to what is ultimately a question of protecting the orderly development of our community. Intelligent setbacks are one of the few opportunities for local control. We must protect future economic development. I would like to highlight the video that I sent to you last week. Recently, on May 16th of 2023, Navigator representatives gave a briefing to the Pocahontas County, Iowa supervisors. According to Navigator's own expert discussing the buffer zones, the setbacks that he recommended are greater than 750 feet. This ordinance gives options for companies to obtain lower setbacks by advocating that the company negotiates in good faith with landowners for waivers and/or applying for a CUP. If the company has documentation to approve a lower setback, this ordinance allows that. This is intelligent land use at its best. Therefore, the county should approve the ordinance as written by your planning and zoning experts and not go below the 750 feet. A lot has been said and learned from the PHMSA, the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, over the last week while they were in Des Moines, Iowa, listening to concerned citizens and elected officials. Repeatedly, it was confirmed that they have no jurisdiction over setbacks and that the important work we are discussing here today is 100% in your hands. So how do we reach intelligent setback distances? How can we be comfortable with the numbers approved today that make sense? The county's existing setbacks on wind towers, cell phone towers, and CAFOs are all greater than what is being proposed in today's ordinance. I think we can all agree that the stigma, perception, and frankly, reality of a very high pressurized, large hazardous pipeline is very likely to chill development more than the existence of wind or cell phone tower. If we can agree on that, then we have agreed that the setbacks related to dwellings needs to be greater than those for wind and cell phone towers. Let's look at CAFOs, the 1,500-foot setback. CAFOs are primarily criticized for their odor. So I ask you to consider if perceptions and stigmas and the real concerns associated with hazardous pipelines, particularly the CO2 pipelines, can have as chilling of an effect on the orderly development of our community as a CAFO. I think the argument can be made based on the growing education and concern around hazardous CO2 pipelines that a greater setback than 1,500 feet is appropriate. At the end of the day, we the people, many who are also small business owners and employers, want our communities to grow to continue to grow and lead the way for South Dakota. But to do so, we need you today to think long-term and to select setback distances that ensure economic growth, not just for one or two CO2 companies, but for the thousands of more brick and mortar businesses and home buyers who have a choice of whether or not to come to our county in the future. Doing the right thing requires a long-term view. Please don't stifle growth with watered-down setbacks. Please pass the proposal before you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I can't see is there anybody besides? Okay. So we have about 3 minutes and 20 seconds left. So I don't know if you guys can allocate your time appropriately, but
Okay. I'll take about 1 minute. Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Linda Nichols, and I kind of ditto with everything that they said. What I wanted to talk about is kind of the easement activity. I have a picture of, we have the Dakota Rural Access. We have a shutoff valve on our property. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. This easement is a lifetime, it's forever. There will be an invasion of landowner privacy forever. With all the advancements in technology, with the planes, helicopters, drones, or who knows what's next, be invading or recording private property outside of the easement area. Even when the pipe is buried below the ground, there's pump stations and shutoff valves above the ground. As I said, we have the Dakota Access shutoff valve on our property, and we've experienced disruption on the easement activity on the easement land. Our dogs bark all the time. There's been vandalism on the shutoff valves. Pipeline staff routinely check that area, creating extra traffic. We also have extra traffic that think it's a driveway that causes, I have 2 children at home, and all that extra activity causes some anxiety for safety. So thank you again for your time, and please pass this ordinance as developed by the state's attorney's office.
Thank you. So we're down to 2 minutes.
All right, good morning. I'm Carla Lems, elected official from District 16. The elected officials in Bismarck, as well as their homeowners association, are concerned with the CO2 pipelines choking the development of their city and have been very public with their ideas provided to protect their citizens. Even if you could prove that CO2 pipelines are 100% safe, the perception of living by one is very concerning to many people. I know, as I have heard these concerns, I just read an email last night from a landowner who says this will be 200 feet from his home. There are people just now hearing about this, and they are very alarmed. Land values of those who have invested heavily in their property for future use should be a concern for Minnehaha County. While I do own property in Minnehaha County, an example I personally speak to is property we have in Lincoln County that was to be sold on auction. After all the advertising was in play, we got notice that the CO2 pipeline had plans to come through. We ended up no-selling that property, which included a building eligibility. This is a very real issue for your constituents. An absolute minimum of 750 feet setback to protect property values is needed. Please ensure the rights of the citizens you represent. Their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The first priority of elected officials should be to secure these rights. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 20 seconds left,
My
gentlemen.
name is Gary Meyer, Minnehaha County. There is a first responder from Satartia, Mississippi that says when he arrived on the scene, everything was froze solid within 1,000 feet. This is not a replica of the pipe. This is a replica of the actual size that they're proposing to put through Minnehaha County. How many of you would build your house within 1,500 feet of this pipe pressured at over 2,000 pounds per square inch, let alone 330 feet?
Okay, I'm sorry, we're out of time. I'm very sorry.
We're out of time.
Yep. Honestly, I wasn't going to give any time because we had an opportunity to provide public comment on this, and out of respect for you, I did provide the 10 minutes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the commission because there wasn't anybody here that wanted to speak in favor of this amendment. Commissioner Karski.
I have a question for Scott, if I may, Scott, put you on the spot. So let's talk about the conditional use permit, the CUP, and how it relates to any setbacks. So if we do, let's just say 750-foot setbacks, and somebody agrees to the pipeline that they would allow them to be within 300 feet. At that point, do they need a conditional use permit?
No, if they obtained a waiver, that is part of the requirements of that would allow them to. The circumstance that would require a CUP is if the pipeline is going to be 300 feet away or 200 feet away, and that property owner does not want to sign a waiver, then the next option would be the applicant, whichever pipeline company that would be, or any pipeline company, would then file for the conditional use permit, which then would take it to the Planning Commission for a hearing on that 200-foot setback instead, or reduction.
So why have a setback if it can be appealed through a conditional use process? I mean, what's the advantage of having that setback? I guess I mean, it almost seems like an eminent domain type of factor because, they're saying we don't want to abide by that setback here, we want to go here, so we are circumventing that process, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
I think you have a two-pronged question. One is really involves eminent domain, and one involves the Planning Commission process. But I wouldn't say it's eminent domain because even if the Planning Commission and the County Board were to reduce it through a conditional use permit process, reduce that setback, and that property owner still felt aggrieved, they could go to circuit court. And so there is further recourse. The Planning Commission and County Commission isn't the final say per se on that conditional use permit or that reduced setback. And why you have a setback or why you have a setback at all is because if they're able to meet that setback and they plan accordingly, it's just a permitted use. You don't even have to, apply. Is it likely that that is going to occur? I am skeptical, given the miles, the 17 to 25 miles that they're gonna potentially travel through the county. Will they be able to get, will they be able to meet that setback? I don't know, and it depends on how cooperative or willing property owners are to sign a waiver, perhaps.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner
Chair.
Kipley.
And that's probably a good jumping off point, Scott. Maybe we should look at the maps to compare what we're even talking about here between 750 and 330.
So I did provide some maps in the material today, and I think Tricia will pull them up for us. This shows, let's see, if you want to, so that it, if you could scroll down to the bottom of the legend of that map, Trish, then I can. So this shows the 750 foot distance measured from parcel lines, from the property lines. And that also shows the buffer. So you can see there's some buffers around different parks and in the municipalities. And then if you go to the
Scott,
next.
can you verify which version are we looking at?
This is
That's the 330.
that's the 330. I don't have it's hard to.
That's 330 measured to the address.
Yeah, okay, so that's the 330. If you click on that again, Trish. That's the 330. If you go scroll down one more, I think that's 330 from the parcel. And if you go one more down, Trish, maybe the 750 is the next one in there. Yeah, this is the 750.
Yes. So that's
In the order, 330 from the property or from the
Parcel,
parcel boundary, then 330 from the
structure, from the address
and
point.
this is 750
Yes.
from the.
From the parcel line.
So this is what I wanted, I think in response to Commissioner Karski, this is part of my problem with the 750 and just the procedural elements of going from a permitted special use to a conditional use permit. If we stick with this, largely we've blotted out the whole county such that we might as well, I mean, to take it to its logical conclusion, and especially some of the public comment says, maybe we should go even higher, 1,500 comparing to other types of setbacks. Basically, this is to say there is no special permitted use. Go straight to conditional use permit. And I think that takes away a leverage piece we have with pipeline companies in the present and in the future to have them sit down with us and have a rational conversation. Because I think if we pass this, they'll just come back with, here's where we want to go. And we'll just go straight to the conditional use permit process. I don't see that we're giving them an incentive to try to engage with us on a sensible setback process. So that's kind of my practical critique of the 750 or any number higher than that. And then again, my basis for the 330, and I think we're looking at, Trish, if we'd go to the other 330, that what you were showing was kind of my original preference in the amendments, and then this is what we Commissioner Karski and I think had a good back and forth a couple weeks ago about the parcel line, and we can redebate that if we want to, but sticking on point of just the measure of the distance, not the methodology of the measurement. I had brought up the PHMSA's own guidelines on evacuation, and we can talk about the diameter of the pipe. We can talk about all these specifications that PHMSA's in charge of those. So we can't, whether a bigger diameter pipe would have a bigger dispersion model, that's just not for us to say. The only number I can come up with that has an impact on land use would be, in the event of an incident, what buildings would we need to evacuate? Otherwise, whereas a CAFO has 24/7 implications for neighbors, a wind tower, 24/7 implications for neighbors, a pipeline under the ground, we all hope it never really has implications for neighbors. So the only incident we can come up with is not an odor or a sight line or something that we traditionally consider with different setbacks with things like CAFOs or noise. It's really just if an incident happens, and the only guideline we get from the feds that supposedly will preempt us on other things, so I just want to go by what they're telling us. They say we would advise you to come upon the scene and evacuate for 330 feet. So I feel like I want to empower Scott and the planning office to say, if you're requesting a building permit in the future within these areas that are highlighted here, we might want to have a conversation about how you're building within 330 feet, and the feds are going to say you're in a potential area that if an incident does happen, God forbid, you might have to contemplate that what this type of structure you're building is in an evacuation area. So I feel like we're on the firmest ground all the way around, and I think it gives us some practical consideration with the pipeline companies to sit down and say, hey, how are you routing this through? Are you working in good faith to get potential waivers? Can we be part of that local process, that local control element here? So when I just compare this map with the 750 map, I feel like this one at least gives us some skin in the game with the pipeline companies that we can actually assert any authority we do have. I think it is a limited authority here. We're not the safety police. We're not the PUC. We do have, I think the county does have some legitimate routing authority, but it's pretty well prescribed that I don't think we can just pick a number out of the hat, and I don't think we can. 750 I think is already getting to the point of too high, and I don't know what basis we have in it. So the 330 is me looking for a basis that is defensible and practical. So those are my initial comments, Madam Chair.
Other comments from the commission? Commissioner Blyenberg.
In regard to Joe's point, I just wanted to mention that I feel like the 750-foot map gives the incentive more to the pipeline to work with landowners in a responsible manner. I think the ordinance lays out the options that they have if that isn't ideal, if the map doesn't look ideal. Also, I think that when you zoom in a little bit more, if you look at the township by township map, this looks pretty constrictive, but when you get closer in there, it's not as difficult as it looks. But I think those guidelines for the landowner to waive that setback is built in there for that reason, to make room for those things. I also just wanted to bring up the economic development point. I don't think any of our goal is to limit economic development in the county in the least. But I feel like this ordinance really helps to channel the growth and the development in a way that we would want to see it go. And then I really just fall back on, again, I think I mentioned this last time, but I feel that it would not be appropriate for me to assume that I have more knowledge about this than the state's attorney's office and the planning and zoning office. I have a lot of confidence in the work that they did.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I'll add to the confusion. I originally asked the state's attorney for information about going back to 1,000 feet. I know that that's probably a waste of time at this point. I've done my homework. I am curious, though, why Iowa and the Navigator program approved and said in their video that they have no problem with 1,500. That confuses me a little bit. I do disagree that there is some issues with economic development and property values because, as one of the individuals already said, there's an issue with pipelines going through a property that wasn't saleable. I also think that we do have options with the CUP. I think 750 is going to have to be a compromise. Not totally happy with that, but that's where I'm at this point.
All right, well, thank you. So, because I'm the one that hasn't had an opportunity to weigh in on this publicly yet, I just would say that when we talked about trying to see what we could do as a county to bring forward a planning ordinance that in my mind would balance the interests of the people with who are sharing space, which is a lot of what planning and zoning is. It's intelligent land use, trying to balance the interest of various competing interests. My goal was not to shut down pipelines, and my goal was to try to balance those interests. And so I would have to tell you that my initial reaction to the map was very much similar to what Commissioner Kipley said. It looks to me like it does away with the special permitted use. It would make it virtually impossible to thread through the county, and that was not my goal. And so I think that overall, obviously, people I respect a lot of you are in this room. Clearly, I respect the commissioners I serve with, and we make tough decisions all the time. Reasonable people can very much disagree on this, but I don't think the pipelines hinder development. I mean, Williams Pipeline goes through the mall area. It's the most heavily developed area in Minnehaha County. I've talked to real estate professionals, and they don't see pipelines coming up in as being generally, not that individual people might not have different ideas, but generally they do not affect the value of property. So I'm not compelled by that argument either. I think that the 330 feet allows us to, provide not what everybody wants, not as much as people want, but something. And then it allows for the conditional use permitting other than that. And so to me, it's not perfect, but I think it's the best that we can bring forward today. I do think we want to get an ordinance passed before the PUC process starts so that everybody understands the rules of the road here in Minnehaha County. And so I will be supporting this amendment. Any further discussion? If not, I would call this amendment and ask for a roll call vote.
Kipley,
Aye.
Benega,
No.
Bleinberg,
No.
Karski,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes 3-2. So that takes us, I think there was a cleanup amendment we needed to address, maybe? Yeah. Is there any other amendments or anything that people want to bring forward?
No, I'd look to the, Madam Chair, I'd look to the state's attorney. We worked on one cleanup. If Eric would like to describe that to us.
Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Eric Bogue, State's Attorney's Office. It's up here. As commented, there's the First Amendment was offered at the previous meeting, changed some of the language in the ordinance as drafted, inserted a phrase referencing a letter of intent or a notice of intent. As my comments would indicate from the last meeting, I wasn't sure how that quite fit in properly with the ordinance as drafted or with the existing revised planning ordinance that the county has. So I've drafted an amendment. I have distributed that amongst all of you and have one put up on the overhead. It does not change the intent, I believe, and I've met with Commissioner Kipley on that point to make sure it's consistent with his original intent. Just changes the language and the nomenclature a little bit to make sure it fits appropriately within the existing draft. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the state's attorney?
No, Madam Chair, I guess I can just expand upon that basically I had come originally 2 weeks ago with this, again, to describe this ordinance, we kind of have three component parts. There was the process of application, there was the restrictions on that, as in setbacks, and then there was the CUP process, if the process led to that third point. On that first point, we were trying to work with some aspects of the application that either seemed onerous or duplicative, and so we had a few different moving parts in that amendment. Originally, I had come up with language describing a letter of intent, basically merely the pipeline just saying, hey, we would like to have a pipeline in your county. and then that would trigger a burden on our planning and zoning to then request documents and whatnot. I think that was another one where Commissioner Karski and I had some good dialogue that maybe that's not the right fit, and we would like some balance between whether this is a true full application that they have to dump a whole bunch of paper on us, or so I think this was kind of meeting in the middle. So this still fits in the it gets rid of the letter of intent language and just goes to notice to put us on notice of their application to the PUC, which then triggers all the prescribed paperwork. So again, I think this is just a cleanup to get rid of the remnants of letter of intent language and going to the application process. So if that's a fair assessment, that's what I had.
So our technology is
I guess I haven't
failing
been-
us today, but all the commissioners do have a handwritten, or have a typed up copy of this amendment showing the changes. Basically, letter of intent was struck and different language was used, more in the idea of a notice, a written notice. Any questions by the commissioners?
Is there action that needs to be taken to clean it up?
I believe we'd want to take an action to accept this amendment to this section 12.18A.
I'm prepared to make the motion to approve amendment SAO-01.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Kipley.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Any further comments, questions, amendments prior to the one item that for sure we need to do is take action on the entire ordinance as amended? Commissioner
Madam Chair.
Bleinberg.
I just had a question we didn't discuss. Is there changes on 1218B9?
That was all part of the amendment that
We just,
just did. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Could have been more clear in my language. I appreciate you pointing that out. Anything else? Commissioner
Madam Chair, I guess
Kipley.
just closing comments before we'd go to a final vote. This has been an incredible learning opportunity. I appreciate all four of my colleagues having good conversations in good faith. I think we've had, probably with each of you, I've had difference of opinion, but we haven't been disagreeable with one another along the way. I think we've gotten lots of feedback from constituents, which has been, again, a great learning experience. I don't know that I'm probably, the positions I've taken, I probably fall somewhere in the middle of all that feedback. I don't know that I've found a way to make everyone happy. There's kind of some mutually exclusive positions on this, and that's such as work, especially in the planning and zoning area. You've got disputes between neighbors, and those can be very personal interests. And I think, as Commissioner Bender kind of highlighted, there's a balancing of interests there, and that creates a difficult process. But I think what I owe most to my constituents is my judgment and kind of independent thinking to find a middle ground that protects certain interests and also allows us to stay in our lane is kind of the thing I've most emphasized, is that a county just doesn't have a lot of authority in this area. But have more confidence than ever that we're kind of striking in on something that's reasonable, that we can get across the finish line here today, and also defend in any legal processes, but also defend as just a good faith effort to work with folks that want to do business in our community. So I don't know that any one of us is fully satisfied with this, but I think it's a good first step of getting us into this arena and working constructively both with landowners and pipeline companies in a reasonable fashion. So I'll be voting in favor on final passage for the ordinance.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Karski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, in my 12 years of being an elected official in other capacities, I've had votes on items that have had impacts of hundreds of millions of dollars to our community and our county. This one truly is the most difficult. There's a lot of unknown, a lot of input. I've never had so much input from the community, and it was 50-50. I mean, truly, the emails the phone calls, it half went each way. So it's understandable, the emotion that goes into this. Just this morning, I had text messages from 2 different state senators asking me not to do any action on this. And I had, in the previous weeks, other state legislators that have done the same thing. So, I mean, we have other legislators that are here asking for action. Just the indication is how split things are with this vote and with what's going on here. I am in favor of the ordinance with the 330-foot setback, and I will vote for it, and primarily because there is a precedence here with the PHMSA, or however you want to say it. We can refer back to where are we getting our information. It's not something that we decided was a reasonable number. This is, I think, a defensible number, if it should come to that. It allows a setback that most people can understand and live with. So I will be voting in favor of it, as difficult as this entire process has been.
Anyone else? I think the rest of the commissioners, we've all had an opportunity to talk about it. I would echo Commissioner Karski. This has been a significantly difficult issue. And it, I remember Commissioner Blyenberg saying something at the meeting that I watched so many times about how a good compromise means nobody leaves happy. I think we're going to at least hit the last part of that. But anyway, if there are no further comments, I would entertain a motion to approve ordinance MC 16-179-23 as amended.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Kipley.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Blyenberg.
Aye.
Benega.
No.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes 4-1. All right, thank you. Out of respect for all of you, I am inviting you to stay for the rest of our meeting. But if you want to leave, I'm going to give about a 5-minute break here so folks have an opportunity to leave. I would admit that it's important things we're doing, but not quite as exciting as this particular issue. And so I'm going to move us to the next item, which is item 11, which is a first reading, and authorize the auditor to publish notice of public hearing on June 27th to consider ordinance amendment 23-3. Scott Anderson.
Thank you, Scott Anderson, Planning Director. Today I'm asking you to set a hearing date for an ordinance amendment. This would be a joint ordinance amendment with the City of Sioux Falls, so it would be setting the hearing date for June 27th, 2023 at 5 p.m. The proposed ordinance amendment is adding public utility facilities in the RC Recreational Conservation District in that joint ordinance. It has come to our attention that while we allow public utility facilities in A1 zoning district and while we allow them in the RC district in the county jurisdiction and in the Del Rapids jurisdiction, it is not allowed in the joint City of Sioux Falls. And the City of Sioux Falls is in the process of building a pumping station, and it's in that RC zoning district. So they've asked us to amend the ordinance, and we're asking you to move forward with the proposed amendment. And it has gone to the Planning Commission at their May meeting and was recommended for approval unanimously. The minutes are attached. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have, but ask you to set the hearing date.
Any questions for Scott? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Set the date of hearing for
June 27th.
June 27th.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Once again, I need to recuse myself.
That's right. So we have item 12, first reading. Item 12, first reading and authorize auditor publish notice of public hearing on June 27 to consider rezoning of 2303 to rezone property from the A1 Agricultural District to the Mapleton Golf Planned Development District. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning. I am Kevin Hookman from the County Planning Department. This is a first reading for rezoning of approximately 210 acres of land from A1 Agricultural to Mapleton Golf Plan Development District. The primary intent is to create a private golf course with a clubhouse and lodging accommodations to accompany the golf course. The location is just on the north side of Sioux Falls, or north of Sioux Falls, by Slip Up Creek Road, as the map shows up on the map on the screen. The Joint Planning Commission voted to approve this unanimously, with some amendments to the requested ordinance. And the approved ordinance was included in your packet. The approved ordinance includes limit to lodging accommodations to 24 total bedrooms and a limit to the hours of operations for the bar that's planned in the clubhouse from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. Again, this is a first reading, so we are here to do that and to approve set a hearing date of June 27th at or after 5 p.m. at the joint hearing. So is there any questions? I am available.
Questions from the commission? I have one before we have a motion. Is there any structure out here planned for like conventions or possibly weddings or receptions and that type of thing?
So the clubhouse is going to be a rather large facility, but the individuals, like the business plan clearly states that he does not want to have public events or any sort of wedding venue sort of structure there.
Okay, so maybe meetings, but not weddings.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Motion to set the second public hearing for June 27th. Roll call vote? Or no, do we do a roll call? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Saw Kim jump there for a second. Not ready for a roll call.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to item 13, which is to consider a motion to approve and authorize the chair to sign the 2024 subrecipient agreement with Department of Social Services in the Jail Competency Restoration Services. Warden Mattson, good morning.
Good morning, Mike Mattson with the jail. As you stated, I'm looking for a motion and authorization for the chair to sign the 2024 subrecipient agreement with DSS for jail competency restoration services. This is a contract renewal. The only change in terms is a reduction in the contract amount from $248,704 to $175,000, and the reduction is based off of projected use in their historical data. Just for frame, in 2022, we were reimbursed $100,825 for housing and medication for individuals on jail-based competency restoration program. So when I saw the reduction, I wanted to make sure that we were still within a range that's appropriate.
Thank you. Questions for the warden? I was wondering if you could just give an update on how you think this program's working.
I think it's working very well. You know, it's difficult with a waiting list for people who need competency restoration to get down to HSE. So one of the reasons why we started doing this in the jail was to help alleviate some of that stress and get some of these people through the judicial process faster. In that regard, I think it's been effective. We still have people that go to HSE that need to go to HSE for competency restoration, but there are quite a few that we can manage inside the jail, and so far it's been pretty productive.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner Benega?
What's the wait to get to HSE?
It varies, honestly. It depends on the people that are there and how long it takes them to get through the program. The people that end up going down there take on the longer end of the range, but people could be waiting 2 months, they could be waiting 6 months. They could be waiting more than that. It depends on the available beds down there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Takes us to item 14, which is to consider a motion to authorize the jail to purchase a Dodge Charger all-wheel drive V6 through the state bid contract. Warden Mattson.
Mike Mattson, Warden again. This is a vehicle that's listed on state bid. I had budgeted in 2023 to purchase a minivan. Unfortunately, there are no minivans on state bid. And this is about $10,000 less than what I had budgeted for. And it will meet the needs for inmate transportation that we have. So,
Questions for the warden?
Move for approval.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
thank you.
Takes us to item 15, which is consider a motion to approve and authorize the public defender to sign a renewal contract for indigent defense services between Minnehaha County and UJS for fiscal year 2024. Tracy, good morning.
Good morning, Tracy Smith, Public Defender's Office. This is a request to sign a contract with the Unified Judicial System for a negotiated amount of $58,604 a year. We have 4 problem-solving courts in Minnehaha County that were started in 2010 up through 2020, DWI court, drug court, veterans court, and mental health court. We have attorneys that attend every week, participate in team meetings, and help advise the team, help with referring clients to the program. The success rate of the program is as high as 80% for the DUI court program, and we just want to be able to continue with the program and providing attorneys each week as we've done for the last year for 2024. And it is the same amount as last year, so we would just ask for approval to re-sign the contract for next year.
Thank you. Questions for Tracy?
Madam Chair, I've got
Commissioner
one question.
Kipley.
All these different jurisdictions, I'm still learning and whatnot. So we talk about Second Circuit courts. Does that mean that our staff is helping out with Lincoln County cases, or does Lincoln County have its own agreement here too? Do you separate between the 2 counties within the circuit on these services?
Lincoln County does not participate in problem-solving courts.
Okay, so a defendant out of Lincoln County wouldn't have access to these services?
The state's attorney has to be willing to participate in problem-solving courts, and as far as I know, their state's attorney is not willing to participate.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Good question. Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Kipley.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Bleinberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Takes us to item 16, which is to consider a motion to approve and authorize the chair to execute 2 right-of-way purchase agreements. Steve Groen, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Groen, Highway Superintendent. As part of our joint project with the City of Sioux Falls to make improvements at the Marion Road Highway 130 intersection, we need to purchase some small parcels of right-of-way on the 2 parcels on the south side of Highway 130. Total cost is $1,250. We're looking for your approval to purchase these 2 small parcels, and we would file the warranty deeds to acquire the property. As an update for the Commission, the contract is being awarded to D&G Concrete. They plan on starting work on the Marion Road portion on July 5th, and then they'd be working on the County Road portion starting later this summer.
Thanks for the update. Any questions for Steve? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Benega.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Bleinberg.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, that takes us to item 17, which is to consider a motion to declare a 1994 Chevy 2500 truck as surplus. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Commission. Mark Renz, Facilities Department. Yeah, I'm looking for authorization to declare the 1994 Chevy 2500 truck as surplus for auction. This is the one that I was in front of you before with the rusted out motor mounts or body mounts and the engine issues. Are there any questions?
Pictures would have been nice. But
I can get you some.
Any
move
other
to
comments?
approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. That takes us to the companion item, item 18, to authorize Facilities Department to purchase a 2022 Dodge Ram truck.
So on this one here, I worked with the highway department to find a 2500 truck that fell under the state bid. There was one available here in town at Billion Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Fiat, Ram. All the options on this truck met contract requirements other than the chrome appearance group package. The dealer decided that they would absorb that cost, so there would be no charge to the county. The total purchase price is $51,821. Are there any questions?
I would just say, Mark and I have talked about this. I did tell him that I thought it was a appropriate purchase without being charged for the chrome package to make sure that we got something quicker than we could have got anywhere else.
I agree. Anything else? All right, I'd entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Takes us to item 19, which is to consider 2024 legislative resolution for submission to the SDACC. Tyler.
Good morning, Tyler Klatt, Commission Office. So as part of the legislative advocacy role that the South Dakota Association of County Commissions has, commissions can submit resolutions to be considered by that group to be part of their legislative platform. Those will be voted on ultimately at the convention, which is here in Sioux Falls in September. So for your consideration today, a resolution has been prepared that would request that the state put together a single software solution that would administer the collection and apportionment of property taxes. As a brief overview background, right now there's 66 counties, which means effectively there's the possibility for 66 different ways to carry out this process. The intent of the resolution being then there could be probably some efficiencies gathered and gained if there were to be a single version of this option, of this process.
Questions? Commissioner Karski.
I asked Tyler to work with Monty Wadenbach after I met with Monty from IT here probably a month ago or so, and he's the one who recommended this because basically our IT discovered a problem that nobody else has quite figured out yet in how, what are the two platforms that we use?
Encode
and Munis, where there's a disconnect on taxation and sending out bills and this type of thing. And most of the counties don't have quite the level of sophistication with their own IT department. Most of them have contracted IT. So what you don't know, you don't know. And this basically brings the issue to the level of every county, because we all use, as far as I'm aware, the same taxation system, because the only one off the shelf, unless you create your own, there's only one that's available commercially, and that's what most of them use. I think Pennington County probably has their own that they created. So it basically asks the state to manage the software and the program so that if something breaks down in a county technologically, there's one point for them to go to for problem resolution. And it really kind of takes the burden of managing this program off the counties and gives it to the state so that we can effectively operate. So this will go to our district meeting in Beersford in 2 weeks, I believe, for approval there. Then it'll go to the State Association Convention in September for approval there, hopefully, and then we'll have to look for a legislator to take take it up at the legislative process starting in January. So that's the process we go through. So I would make a motion to approve it.
I'll second with a brief comment.
Commissioner Kipley.
I think this is just one small item within a broader array of efficiencies I hope we can find. I just think maybe this is just our opening salvo with the summer study on the legislature engaging with us on different efficiencies or funding sources, or I just appreciate this in its particular, but also in the spirit of it, of where can we find these types of things. And so I think this is part of an opening conversation that I hope we can all engage with the legislators on that summer study and beyond. But so I'm supportive of this.
Anyone else? I would agree. I mean, I think this is a situation where Minnehaha County, we are very fortunate that we have great resources. We have great IT, we have great state's attorney, we have great depth throughout the organization. Not that we couldn't have more, but you know, when you think about how hard it is for us, and then you try to think about all the counties across the state and trying to deal with the same issues we deal with, but without the staff to deal with it, it just makes a lot of sense that the state would take this over. So I'm supportive of it as well, and I'd entertain a motion.
We have a motion.
Oh, we do, sorry. I wasn't keeping up with you. Then roll call vote, please.
Karski.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. All right, so this is our opportunity for public comment, and I know Steve has a little announcement for us. Breaking
Yes,
news.
Once again, Steve Groen, Highway Superintendent, on the commission calendar for Thursday evening at 5:30 is an open house out at West Central High School for the South Dakota 38 Corridor Study. It's a joint project with South Dakota DOT, the cities of Humboldt, Hartford, Sioux Falls, and Minnehaha County. They're going to have an additional stakeholders meeting open to elected officials on Thursday afternoon from 2:30 to 4 p.m. at West Central High School in the Commons area, and the DOT asked me yesterday to invite the commissioners to attend if it fits in your schedule and you're available.
So the commissioners are invited to this 2:30 to 4, but the public is invited to the one
At 5:30.
at 5:30.
7:30, so.
All right, any questions? Thank you.
Yep.
All right, anyone else here for public comment today? Good morning.
Good morning. Teresa Staley, former city councilor and active citizen. First of all, I want to say congratulations on your employment of Tom Greco, sitting over here to my left. I worked with Tom for 4 years. He is a man of integrity, responsiveness, always treated the staff, the councilors, and the public with respect. And since I've been out of office, he has continued to be such a strong helper. Tom, I appreciate it so much. We're going to miss him. And I wish Carol the best, and thank you for your service as well. So you did a great move on that hiring. I would have been here sooner, but I just finished up my 3rd year teaching music on the Standing Rock Indian Reservation. Teaching music to the Native American children up there. I've always wanted to do that. It's been a fabulous opportunity to give back of my life's experience. Had I been here, I would have been here sooner because I'm very, very concerned about your action to limit petitioners' access to the public. I have been standing out here since 2006. I've been involved in 3 petition drives. And the one that really resonated with the community the most was Snowgates. Many people have enjoyed that service. That was because of our ability to meet with the public in this space. I have had fabulous conversations with people through the years. I've been down here many times as I'm running for public office to gather signatures. And when I first started in 2006, Sue Roust, our county auditor, was so helpful and embraced the activity of meeting with the public and gathering signatures. Bob Litz continued with that graciousness. And for the record, I am pro-life. I'm a Republican. I'm anti-abortion. So that issue, and that's apparently what spurred this on, is I'm not for that issue, but I am for the process. And when we put down one issue because we are not supportive of it, we're putting down everybody. All the things that have happened that represent the citizens' right for the initiative process. So I'm here to beg you. I've been praying about this. I'm here to beseech you to reconsider this. Enforce what you have in place. Tell people to stand back away from the doors, be respectful. I mean, I've had fabulous conversations, as I said earlier, with people. It's a great gathering place of our county. And to push people back into that parking lot area, I just looked at it today. I mean, this is ridiculous, and it's so sad. And 3 of you were on the county commission before, and you always supported us, our ability to stand where we were at. Leah, I'm very disappointed. I supported her. And to come out with this out of nowhere is just very problematic. So before, I know there's some kind of a lawsuit happening, and again, the Democrats brought it up. I was grateful they did, because I don't have the money to do this, but I'm begging you, and I will continue to pray about this, that you would reconsider this and come back and say, you know, we're going to enforce what we have, be respectful. You know, I understand there was some kind of skirmish about debates on the issue, but don't take away our right to stand, to be there and meet with people. Please, don't reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment this morning? Not too many people left in the room, so it doesn't look like it. All right, so I would move to Commissioner Liaison Reports. Are there any Commissioner Liaison Reports? All right, I think we've been all been pretty busy between pipelines and budgeting. We did have a budget meeting last Thursday. We have another budget meeting today starting at 11:30. Those are a lot of important conversations, and I appreciate all the effort that the commissioners have been putting into that process. We had great conversation last week, and I anticipate good conversation this afternoon. We did have a meeting last week on the Juvenile Justice Center planning continues to move forward. We'll be likely bringing forward a report just kind of as we finish this initial phase of that within the next month or so. If there are no other liaison reports, then I move to non-action commission discussion. Any non-action commission discussion? All right, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We'll see you all again in an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah.